28 years, 28 young men bathe on the shore. 28 young men, and all so lonely. 28 years of womanly. Let me start that poem again. 28 young men bathe by the shore. 28 young men, and all so friendly. 28 years of womanly life, and all so lonesome. She owns the fine house by the rise of the bank. She hides handsome and richly dressed after the blinds of the window. Which of the young men does she like the best? Ah, the homeliest of them is beautiful to her. Where are you off to, lady? For I see you. You splash in the water there, yet stay stock still in your room. Dancing and laughing along the beach came the 29th bather. The rest did not see her, but she saw them and loved them. The beards of the young men glistened with wet. It ran from their long hair. Little streams passed all over their bodies. An unseen hand also passed over their bodies. It descended tremblingly from temples and ribs. The young men float on their backs. Their white bellies bulge to the sun. They do not ask who seizes fast to them. They do not know who puffs and declines with pendant and bending arch. They do not know whom they souse. With spray. This painting could get you in a lot of trouble with Anthony Comstock and his Methodist smut hounds. They would rather see you in prison or have you commit suicide before you should offend their Society for the Suppression of Vice sensibilities. Does anyone here know the artist responsible for this painting? My good friend, Tom Eakins. Eakins is the only artist I know who can resist the temptation to see what he thinks ought to be rather than what is. Eakins sees the spirit, but does not make a man all spirit. And Eakins sees the flesh, but does not make too much of it, does not make him all body. Eakins errs a little, just a little, in the direction of the flesh. And this photograph, this painting, this series, all me by Eakins. Yes, photographs, zoetropes, painting, you name it, Tom does it. His last favor to me, he's going to be one of my pallbearers and carry these old bones to my tomb. Tom likes to say that he paints naked women because a naked woman is the most beautiful thing there is. Except a naked man. And that naked man, do you recognize him with his clothes off? That's Bill Duckett. Remember him from earlier? Well, Bill's one of Eakins' nude models. Now, nude models get Eakins in a lot of trouble. One time, teaching, Eakins snatches the loincloth off the model, a man, and there are women in class. is forced to resign. Now, was it prudishness or professional jealousy? You see, Tom's work is not appreciated by the artistes, the so-called elected professionals. The people that like Tom's work best are those who have no artistic prejudices to interpose. But it could also have been the prudishness. And we all get blasted. When I say father stuff or mother stuff or onanist or bare legs or belly, oh God, you might suppose I was citing some diabolical obscenity. Will the world ever get over its own indecencies? Take your clothes off. Take her clothes off. Paint naked bodies. Say the unspeakable. Break the rules. Knowing Tom Eakins gives me courage. And reading Emerson gives me courage. Whosoever would be a man must be a nonconformist. America is a poem in our eyes, and it will not wait long for meters. Wait no longer, America. The 4th of July, I mail a copy of the Leaves of Grass to Emerson, and this letter comes back to me in the mail. Dear Sir, Leaves of Grass, the most extraordinary piece of wit and wisdom that America has yet contributed. Your free and brave thought, I have great joy in it. I find incomparable things said incomparably well. I greet you at the beginning of a great career. Emerson. Simmering, simmering, simmering. Emerson brings me to a boil. As soon as I can, I republish the Leaves of Grass, 2nd edition, and on the spine, I stamp in gold, I greet you at the beginning of a great career. R.W. Emerson. I include the whole text inside and my response to him, and there's some new poems and some reviews. Now, some have said that I should have asked him first. It did not sever our bond. In Boston, we discussed the 3rd issue of Leaves of Grass. I have 2 new sections of poems, the Calamus poems, Greek, and the Children of Adam poems about man, woman, love. Emerson thinks I should get rid of the Children of Adam poems. He has objections, neither moral nor literary, but with an eye toward my success. He thinks that the poems will sell, but for sex. I should eliminate certain objectionable passages. He offers absolutely no spiritual argument against the text. Give it a chance to be seen. That's his contention. But he does not see that if I cut out the sex, I might just as well cut everything out. The full scheme would no longer exist. It would be violated in its most sensitive spot. Sex. 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 Whether you sing a song or make a machine, go to the North Pole, or love your mother, or build a house, black shoes, or anything at all. It's sex, sex, sex. Sex is the root of it all. Sex, the coming together of men. And women, sex, sex, sex. Here with us, discredited. Always imminent, but not suffered, rejected from our art, but still sex, sex. sex. It's the root of all roots, the life below the life. And it's the thing in my work that has excited the roundest opposition, the sharpest venom, slander, from people who consider themselves custodians of the morals of the world. Emerson understands. He's the one that coined the Puritan Trinity. He asks me once, does it ever concern you, do you ever fear that your freedom, your ease, your nonchalance with men will be misunderstood? Do you misunderstand it? No, I see it for what it is. It's beautiful. That's what he said. I remember Emerson visiting me the first time in New York. We went to Pfaff's on Broadway. No, it was the Fireman's Hall on Mercer Street. Many a young man caught his eye there. It reminded him of being distracted by his young friend Martin Gay. Emerson is Greek. And so is our friend Thoreau. Yes, Henry David's civil disobedience, Thoreau. Don't take my word for it. Read his journals. I love Manhattan and he loves Walden Pond, but we share Greek views and he likes me. He wrote this about me. We ought to rejoice greatly in Walt Whitman. How they must shudder when they read him. He's awfully good. Well, not everybody likes me. Listen to this. Walt Whitman knows as much about art as a hog knows about mathematics. I have scores of quotations like this from my literary critics. Sticks and stones. But there are those who would break my bones. Secretary of the Interior, James Harlan, finds a copy of Leaves of Grass in my desk at the Bureau of Indian Affairs, fires me. Boston District Attorney Oliver Stevens, together with Massachusetts Attorney General Marsden and the Society for the Suppression of Vice, inform me that if I publish the Leaves in Boston, they'll have it declared obscene. We argue back and forth. My publisher gets involved, Finally, they tell us absolutely 2 poems must go. The first, To a Common Prostitute, the title. The title alone stops them. And the second is called A Woman Waits for Me. And let me share with you what is perhaps the objectionable passage. It is I, you women. I make my way. I am stern, acrid, large, undissuadable. But I love you. I do not hurt you any more than is necessary for you. I pour the stuff to start sons and daughters fit for these states. I press with slow, rude muscle. I dare not withdraw till I deposit what has so long accumulated within me. Through you I drain the pent-up rivers of myself. In you I wrap 1,000 onward years. We avoid the censors and send the plates to the city of brotherly love to publish them there. Emerson warned me, though. I am now officially banned in Boston. Meanwhile, Harvard Library has a copy of Leaves of Grass, and they've stamped it with 2 blue stars. And they keep it with all the other taboo books. under lock and key, safely away from the students. Don't let him get to you. I am more resolute because all have rejected me than I ever would have been had all accepted me. And remember, we will also always have allies. I have here both a book and a letter that came all the way from Honolulu. And the letter begins, I am the stranger who, passing, desires to speak to you. Those words are from Leaves of Grass. He starts his letter quoting me to me. Traveling interesting islands, for the first time I act as my nature prompts me. Not in America, not even California, where the men are tolerably bold. I sailed to Tahiti in 5 weeks to live the real life there, for your sake as well as my own. Affectionately yours, Charles Warren Stoddard. I'm working on a letter back to Charles. It begins, I received your beautiful, soothing South Sea idyll. I warmly approve of your adhesive nature. I know that the Western world would condemn, but those tender personal relations in the Pacific Islands touch me deeply. Much closer to home, I am admired by Abraham Lincoln. We see each other regularly on the streets of the capital, and we never speak, but he knows who I am. Because back at his law office in Springfield, he used to read aloud from Leaves of Grass to his colleagues. Imagine Abraham Lincoln's voice saying, for every atom belonging to me is good, belongs to you. And I'm admired in England. Dear Mr. Whitman, for years I have been attempting to explain what you call adhesiveness. I pored over Calamus as I used to pore over Plato, burning, panting. Tell me more about the love of man for man. John Addington Symonds. And then he writes, I might have been a mere English gentleman had I not read Leaves of Grass in time. And then he writes, in your concept of comradeship, do you contemplate semi-sexual emotions and actions between men? I write to him, the questions on Calamus daze me. That Calamus allowed the possibility of such as mentioned is terrible. The leaves are not to be mentioned for such gratuitous, undreamt, unreckoned, morbid inferences, disavowed by me and damnable. And I hope that stops his damnable questioning. I'll add to it, one great difference between you and me is restraint. At certain moments, I let the spirit impulse rage its utmost, its wildest, its damnedest. In my Leaves of Grass, I do so. Now, when he reads that, if he's half as intelligent as I think he is, he'll understand that I cannot possibly answer his question in a letter. He should have visited in person like Carpenter, but the words of a famous American author in writing, he would use that, print them right off. Ah, there he is. That's Symonds with one of his children. He's a married father of 4. Yes. Yes, that's it. Yes. Here is a mask he should certainly recognize. I'll write to him, though always unmarried, I have had 6 children. That's not a lie. I mean, perhaps a metaphor. Oh, give me some credit. Your sexual revolution would never have begun in the 1960s if I had not written so freely and openly about sex and the body. Do you need me to be the father of gay liberation as well? Simmons answers his own questions. Why do I need to answer them? Yes, 6 children. Indeed, there's Simmons in Tahiti. No, Simmons in England. And Charles Warren Stoddard in Tahiti. And Abraham Lincoln in Illinois. And Edward Carpenter in England. And Oscar Wilde. Yes, Oscar's a fine, large, handsome youngster. Young man, actually. I find him genuine, honest and manly, frank, outspoken, and manly. And he had the good sense to take a great liking to me. And he writes this. My dear, dear Walt, before I leave America, I must see you again. There is no one in this wide, great world of America whom I love and admire so much. You are a factor in the heroic and spiritual evolution of the human being. The kiss of Walt Whitman is still on my lips. Mwah, Oscar. I write for those who will in future ages understand me. So, 6 children. Let's see, there's 1 president, Wilde, Simmons, Carpenter, Stoddard, 4 writers, and the 6th, a painter, reading my leaves of grass as he painted this.
Dear friend, whoever you are, here, take this kiss. I give it especially to you. Do not forget me. I feel like one who has done his work. I progress on. The unknown sphere, more real than I dreamed, more direct, dance awakening rays about me. So long. Remember my words. I love you. I depart from materials. I am as one, disembodied, triumphant, dead.
I bequeath myself to the dirt, to grow from the grass I love. If you want me again, look for me under your boot soles.
just a couple-minute break and allow anybody to take off who needs to take off, or get a drink or use the restroom and come back, and then we'll have a short Q&A. And I've got some Q's if you've got some A's. Thank you so much.
And just sort of my own kind of experience between doing Q&As as a producer or presenter in New York, which I was for a while, and doing them here, is that I think sometimes the place in which the artist is at in their process really determines a particular kind of thing that they would like to get from people. So if, for those of you who were here for Yasuko's Q&A, I was telling Patrick this earlier, I think it was interesting because for her, she didn't even want to come up here. She wanted to stay in the back. She didn't really want to have a dialogue, which is usually Q&As are more kind of back and forth. But all she wanted, and I mean all in the kind of biggest, widest kind of sense, is that she wanted to just hear people's just responses, and that's it. And she didn't want any kind of discussion around it. She just wanted to gather all of that material. So we're asking Patrick what would be useful for him. And so you said it.
Yeah.
You said it in the beginning.
I
So
would.
you want to say it again?
And I'll repeat it. And maybe I can ask it even more specifically. So there are sort of right now, as of the birth of this kind of tonight, 3 versions of this show. There's the big cast version that I mentioned before. And in January, in order to get to this step, I did what I called the totally unplugged version, where it was just Whitman alone on stage talking. But now we've worked to begin to reintegrate the dance back into sort of a one-man show. And what I'm curious to know is what you think seeing the videos contributes that you wouldn't have if it was just me here without the videos. So that's really like the main course of my question and what I'd be interested in. Any just impressions, questions, things that you saw that you liked, that you were pleased with, but especially in regards to what the video being projected as it was adds to what you can imagine maybe the piece would be without it. Yeah.
I think something would have been lacking without it, or the whole presentation would be a little bit more like other one-man shows of just talk, or one-woman shows.
Mm-hmm.
And also, a lot of us have an intellectual idea of homosexual love, but we don't really, it's not real physical to us. And having the background is what contributes to that, so that we get a deeper understanding and reality. But at the same time, at least in this studio, it was a little too vague and fuzzy. We couldn't really tell what was, at least I didn't always know what was going on. And adding to that, if you're talking about people, it's always nice to see a photograph. Were they the real photographs of the people, or were they?
Mostly, yes.
Mostly.
Yeah. So
But
when I talk
I think
about
that
like Peter
focuses.
Doyle and Bill Duckett and all of those were.
So there's a balance between the physical reality and the sort of, otherwise maybe almost like a dreamland story.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole thing was just so beautifully well wrought and very compelling.
Thank you.
I wondered if there was, because I was in love with images and that kind of thing, and that's, I wondered if there was, if you were applying sort of a dramatic tension with your audience by denying us focus, by denying us the enjoyment of images. And so there were some images I said, I just need to see it bigger. So that was one thought that I had. But I wondered if because then you go and you sort of move it out, and it's like, you know, now I can be much broader and sort of revealing, and that's one of the thoughts that I had with regard to that. I like the multiplicity of both image and talk and conversation and seeing a live actor. That, for me, feel like that I'm in the writer's head. I'm experiencing kind of how they, you know, take an idea, a word, but it has, you know, resonance or reverberations of different, you know, ideas. The other thing I thought was perhaps I thought there was a missed opportunity with the shadow play. I wanted to see you engage with the shadow, because I felt like the idea, the concept of the shadow with the language and the idea that you're concealing on something, idea that, you know, you don't bring, you know, all of yourself into full light, you know, when you're writing the word and that kind of thing. And then I thought the shadow play, and there was something about, love the whole broken paper coming together in images. I thought that was perhaps the most successful aspect of it, that just made me think, wow, I'm just so, you know, yeah. But then I thought, I'd like to see the whole idea of the written and the how that's tactile, along with dance being tactile, and then having that somehow emerge in the shadow that you interact with. Because I thought the playing out to audience, I just got tired. I was like, no, I want to see the dramatic engagement between you and this other person, because it seems like you're fighting or you're conversation. So that was, yeah, I wanted to see that back and forth. But anyway, that's my thought.
I love the images. I really want to, you know, amen what you said in terms of understanding homosexual love. It sounds so silly, but it never crossed my mind that men are attracted to the manliness of other men. Like, that was not real until I saw that. And you said it, and then I saw it. I like the images being unclear, because it felt like memory. It felt like we were in your head. That was, I really loved that. And of course I love the jar of water at the beginning, and the jar being, so that felt like memory as well. Your stool and your desk, I was just so troubled the whole time. I thought that you were going to fall, and it just felt like a troublesome prop for me, and I wanted to take. I mean, you're a big frame, and that helped to bring to light, you know, homosexual love as well. And I wanted the table to fit you a little bit more. Like, I felt like you were really bending down when it could have fit your frame. So.
Have a big standing desk, maybe.
Something. I couldn't quite imagine, because I understand it's nice and compact, which allows you to see everything. But I was just like, oh, it just feels like you didn't have a good relationship with that desk because it was so short.
I like this fall table.
Oh, yeah.
It felt like, you know, you have so many thoughts and feelings and expressions in your head, and it's less that it's on the table and in a desk and in a book and in a thing, because your whole thing was to get it out, you know, whereas the other writer didn't. He kept it in that desk, he kept it in the book, he didn't publish, he didn't do those things, and you looked so big next to the desk, and you were more, you were out there. The idea is the poetry wasn't in the desk, if that makes sense. I like the videos too, because I think it adds to poetry. When you're listening and you're hearing words and you're getting it. When you add emotion to it, somehow your soul feels it a little bit more. And you can go with it. Like with the two men that were swirling each other, that one. Even like your discussion with Peter. Not that you were going around and around, but you feel it in words. Then when you see it in action, and you're speaking the poetry, I feel like somehow it hits two levels of learning in your body. You're hearing your brain, but you're also feeling it in your things. That is helpful. And a little bit with the fuzzy too. When it was really small in the piece of paper, sometimes you want to see more. And I kept thinking no, because that'll take away from you if you're speaking. But I did want a little bit more.
thinking about I'm thinking about something, forgive me how it comes out. So that we get at the centerpiece of the play, it seems like that text, the Latin on the sin that can't be named. And that seems to, that right away came to me when you asked the question about what are the projections doing, and what's dance doing in this work.
Mm-hmm.
It's the physical embodiment, the remnant, the trace of the thing that can't be named, the sin that can't be named. But it seems like you point us in that direction. And there's so much language. There's just this like overwhelming amount of language by one person,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so it's kind of intriguing to think that there's something that can't be talked about. All the talking is about the things that can't be talked about, but there's still so much talking about that, right? But then to have a presence on stage that we get to engage with, that is, that's real for us, that has a real life in the arc of 90 minutes, you know, that can't be exactly described or talked about or fully articulated or defined inside what
Mhm.
you're telling us. So I find that to be an invitation, and however you want to play it, or you want to blurry it more to create mystery, or you want to make it clearer so we have more time with it, if they're larger, or to scale with you, or so we see them more, whatever. I trust your team. But yeah, that seems to be a research question that you're hunting down. Is what is the kind of homosocial bond between two dancers really about? In, you know, what has your 10 years inquiry by a dance really been about? You know, it's not exactly obvious that two men dancing with contact in the way we're seeing is gay sex, or
Right.
Greek,
Mm-hmm.
or archival, or historical. I mean, those are leaps you're asking us to make that seem like it worked based on the judgments
Uh-huh.
around the room, that two men dancing together, partnering men are lovers. You know, you've led us there, but that's not exactly obvious.
Hmm.
You know, so like dance is sexual? That's curious. Is it?
Yeah, well, there are certainly some more conservative religious traditions that would always say that it is and seek to prohibit it. And my experience, the biggest surprise for me in the whole process all along was I was delighted that there were all these guys that came and wanted to be in this project and work. But what I hadn't expected was that they would actually come to embody what I believe to be kind of Whitman's utopian dream for what men in America might be, not just for America, but for the world. I mean, it was really very utopian, but he saw it as a cure for materialism, a cure for, you know, the cities being too hard and not having enough nature. He saw it really as a kind of real democratic force in the best sense, and that it, and for Whitman it was not limited in terms of what might the relationship be. I mean, he didn't exactly write about this, but to interpret his writing, it seems like it might be, and this same interpretation is possible then when you see two men dancing together. They might be, on the most intimate level, they might be lovers, or they might be brothers, or they might be friends, or they might be co-workers, or they might just be two strangers on the dance floor together. But there's this multiplicity of possible interpretations, and for me that's important because that resonated with how I think Whitman had to write to survive. He had to write so that Oscar Wilde would get so excited by reading his stuff that he would think, oh, I'm not the only one in the world who wants to write about these things. And at the same time, he had to write in such a way that his stuff wouldn't all get thrown in the trash bin. And he had enough resistance as it was, but he also had supporters, and supporters who supported him for things like his cosmic theology, for his democracy, for things other than his specific focus on the love of men for men. And so, yeah, I mean, that was the big surprise for me in developing and working with this group. And I think it was palpable from the moment they came on stage. And the thing that I love is I think I still feel it in the video that Nancy shot of them, that there's a kind of joyfulness in being together that's not competitive, that's supportive, and that's physical. I mean, like I sometimes think of contact improvisation, it's like wrestling where both people win. You know? And where they just try to help each other make the best moves possible. Yeah.
Well, going back to the furniture again, and maybe I'm historically incorrect, but when I visit 19th century houses of people, I'm constantly amazed at the tininess of them, especially for, I don't know if Whitman was sort of middle class, lower, what he was. And so to have things that were a little too small for you complemented the greatness of who he was, if we wanted to get really fancy about it. But mostly it just brought it down to reality, like the kind of glasses. And I just felt, yes, maybe you were a little too large for it, but that's the way life was. You had to hunch a little bit.
Well, you know, that was actually a question for me, and that's sort of in the next iteration of this, is like, to the chair, and even when I first did it with a big cast, it was sort of the set was kind of a historical reference to Whitman's room in Camden. But now I think actually it could also be a completely contemporary chair and table, because Whitman's here in Tallahassee talking to you. He's like somehow managed to get to time travel. And so he says, you know, the future is here now. And I've come back to visit the future I used to dream so fondly of. And so I don't know if it's helpful or not, or maybe doesn't even matter.
But in the beginning, you made that very clear that you were coming back. And all the way through you were talking, but I wasn't thinking of time by the end. Maybe we need a reminder of time at the end. I was just fascinated by the thing.
I think I was, because the images were modern. So it was that, it was, we were in your head, and these were modern images. For me, that's what reminded me that he had come back to
Yeah.
talk with us. So that was pretty cool.
Interesting. Anybody else, anything especially around like, come back to my first question, was there something that the dance, getting to see the dance contributed that you feel like you would have missed if you had not seen the dance?
I felt that in the puzzling of the images of the dance, when there were moments of the papers being added and taken away in order to kind of bring the images together as a whole, and then they would be scattered. So we would grasp at it, and then it would almost go away, and it really seemed to be, that seemed to be an important part. I can't remember the name, but it's in the Cali, or the Calamus? Yeah, that section.
The Calamus poems?
Yes.
Yeah, Calamus.
And I felt that really read strongly to have that happening, because it was, the images are so a little hard to see, a little hard to focus on, and something about that puzzling and the way that it spoke to his poetry and how he was puzzling things together. There's just something there.
So let me turn the tables. There's other people sitting up here and you sitting there. Maybe any of you have questions that you want to ask. Any of you have questions that you want to ask. I'm really grateful for hearing just your response to this. It's very helpful to me in my process to figure out how to move forward.
I'm just very basic.
Mm-hmm.
What was the choice made for having a transparent piece of fabric there? Unless that was a choice or was not a choice, because it seemed as if the live feed, I was able to see the person behind it manipulating the pictures. Was it a live feed going on, or
Yeah.
was that recorded?
I mean,
Okay.
there's a real-time manipulation of images happening on that table, sort of like a VJ,
Yeah.
video jockey,
Yeah.
sort of manipulating the images. So,
I really enjoyed the fact that it wasn't a set, pre-choreographed piece of puzzling the pictures together, that it was actually happening as you were speaking live.
Mhm.
It made me give almost an interpretation that it might be different every night, or each time that you're presenting it, it could be something unexpected could happen, or some of the photos slid off, and I really enjoyed being able to watch that in the moment, that it wasn't something that was preset, even though it sort of was, but I thought it gave a little bit of spontaneity to it, which was very powerful. And I enjoyed being able to see it. I didn't know if that was a choice. I'm guessing it was, but why that choice was made.
do you want to talk any about? You guys were the ones that came up with that idea.
I think it was the idea to have this time jump, but going back a little in the time maybe, or try to figure out how to have this modern medium like adapted to the Whitman poetry and on the set, and so that was kind of the basic idea, to have a live manipulation. Like it's a camera, old-fashioned kind of. And yeah, I'm glad you appreciated the live thing. And yeah, we were trying to but less pay attention to the effect and more that it always has something to do with the text that is going on, whether it is a poem or I don't know, like a circumstance, like a historical context. Yeah, that was kind of the process we had here to figure out and I mean, we had tons of material too, so.
Yeah.
I'm taking liberties to talk the second time, but I just felt really drawn in. So, but when the projections go away, well, I really miss them so much, and I just have to start from scratch every time they go away to kind of get myself back to a place where I'm willing to not have them there for a while, and then just not know it again. But it's like every time they come back, we get to go in and hope that it lasts as long as possible, and it does something to Patrick as a performer every time that's profound. It's different every time what it does to you, but how you're deliberately engaging with it and how you may not know what we are seeing that you're doing with them. But I just, is that something that you're still testing out over time, over time when it comes in and out? Or is this, because I remember you had said something the other day with class that X amount of the script is your work, X amount is Whitman's work, and you like the percentages as they are you thinking similarly about the percentage of the time that we see you with white fabric and the percentage of the time we see you there? Because if not, I think maybe you can, I don't know, maybe it matters just to hear somebody who's deeply paying attention and just wants to go as far as you can go with those projections. You know what I mean? I just think they put you in these colored worlds, especially a lot of color, opera. And you talk about super saturation of the opera and these memories. It just feels, to me, there's a real intuitive thing going on when we have them there. And then when they go away, it's like, it's a little confusing where they went.
I want to say something. I just feel like I'm supposed to, but I'm just going to say, just to kind of tag on to this, I'm just, the idea about how you're playing, you have all of that, all of the material that you've got, and you're playing it. Like, this is something that you are still, you're going to be doing this over and over again for some length of time. You're going to have another residency. You're gonna, right. So this is stuff you're still figuring this out. But I also had the same feeling, like that it was both really great that they went away because of the reason that you were just talking about. But sometimes I felt like they went away too long. So that's why I was feeling uncomfortable about saying anything. But the other thing is just that also, you know, the components of this in terms of the opera, like, and that opera and maybe the sound, you know, because the opera, so you sort of fall in, you know, it's beautiful to you and you fall into it, and it has such kind of resonance that the sound, I mean, you're not maybe playing with that right now, but I'm just saying that maybe you could mess around with the sound or something, it'd be much louder. I loved when you went back there and moved the piano back there. I wasn't sure exactly if that was intentional or not, but then all of a sudden you had more of this fractured of the images going across, which was really, really great.
And when that happened in rehearsal, because when I came in, the screens were kind of all lined up as you saw it. And we talked about the fact if we broke them up, maybe had different size screens or put them in different ways, whether in fact the footage would be strong enough to move from screen to screen, and then the blackness in between, the mind would fill in where it was. And the first couple of times we did it, it seemed to work really well. Now it's, my question to you is there too much close-up footage? And is there too much footage that's the same, that in fact you would like some different stuff? Because that's something we've been playing back and forth with too.
Perhaps I'm just interjumping
Sure.
for a second, because I wanted to talk about the presence of the video and the non-presence. And I think a large part of the presence of Patrick in the space is happening with the lights, and with the lights we're still like, I mean, we have basically 3 different light cues or 4. And I think if we putting more power and focus on the lighting part and on you being on the stage and directed on the stage, that will help as well, because then you get another relation. Now the stage is only, I mean, it's mainly been how I say, focused. Yeah, it's mainly been focused through the projections, but I think there's another layer of really like, I mean, legwork doing and saying what is the position, and that's still something we are figuring out, I think, in the next rehearsal. And then it fits as well much better together, because then you feel the differences. And as well in the second part where everything's broken up, and then it's all the critic parts going on the set.
But you had that question, so I'm just wondering if anybody had a response to that.
I enjoyed that scene puzzling part, the close-ups of the faces. I felt that was good to have those close-ups, and too in the opening close-ups with the water. That was nice, but I could see there maybe being room for, once you do have them all spread out, play between having more motion and kind of a wider shot to allow us to take it all in as a bigger environment.
I really like the close up in the water too.
Yeah.
Because you could feel it when you were going through all the body parts in the beginning. You almost want to feel it on yourself. You know, when you go through it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's.
But the one part where it was the guy, I thought it was too close, because I wanted to think less about what he looked like and more about how he was moving. The white-haired guy. So yeah, that close up gave me no feeling into a body, because it was just a face.
I was thinking that there were times, and I think this might be impact of doing productions at Children's Theater, and then they use like scrim and reveal things, and so there are times where you may have, you know, like lots of color and lots of, you know, full scenic value, you know, in terms of, you know, scenic painting, and then they can make it all go away with the, you know, the use of a scrim. And there are times where I just wanted to see your figure made prominent and not have it broken up with either blank screens or scrims or anything. I just wanted to have it sort of have your figure, because you strike such a, I mean, you are blessed with such a great, you know, figure, you know, you just come out, and I think that says something about the manliness that, you know, you're trying to project and show and reveal to us. And I think there are times where I want to see that, and then I want to see the images come back. I think also this whole idea of the utopia might be helped by seeing, you know, the collective, because we never really, I think we get some sense of the 18, but I haven't seen a performance with the 18 men. But I remember hearing about it on the phone with friends and that kind of thing. I was thinking, oh God, I really just want to see that sense of the utopia that you speak of, you know, and have that sort of projected out there. So maybe some wider shots where we can experience that might be, you know, another detail that helps to clarify for us.
Mm-hmm. Is there anybody who's just been sitting here quiet but almost has something that they're going to say and hasn't said anything yet? I just like to always encourage anybody to.
Well, sure.
Well,
Sure. To respond to the question about the close-ups versus the longer distance shots, there was something really intimate about them, and I love that about the cameras being able to get really close to it, especially the moment where I think they were touching each other's belts or something like that, and you just kind of like saw the camera movement and touching the body. Yeah, I really enjoyed those moments a lot. That one in particular, as well as seeing them sort of the arrangement of them in somewhat of this line that mirrored the line arrangement first of the screens.
mm-hmm.
That was really cool. And then especially in hearing everybody talk and put these pieces of it together, I'm like putting the pieces of it together for myself, and this sort of reminds me like the screen, this body, a page, and then it gets puzzled and broken apart and written on and all these things, and so it's just so there's so many different layers of meaning and that are in here and that maybe don't that are really so subtle. They're so subtle, so subtle, which is great. You know, like when I got it, I was like, yeah, but I got it with the help of so many people here. That was so yes.
It's interesting to me to hear that it was effective for you to see footage that was out of focus, because as a videographer, I knew that on the monitor it was clear, and it was, you know, the colors looked nice and everything like that, and we've been having dialogue the past 10 days about what their aesthetic is and the intent that it's nicer not to see and to have in the imagination, and me to keep saying, but I want to see it. So, but I was enjoying parts of it.
And what I love about this is that Nancy specifically does not shoot in HD, because that's a kind of quality, and I mean, some people would say, well, HD, like you just get to see so much more, but Nancy's response to that would be like, oh, that's more clarity than I want.
Especially for Whitman.
Yeah.
I mean, I do have an HD camera. I do use it for other things, but in this particular fact, I used a camera that should probably be in the Smithsonian now. You know, it's an XL1. But it gives, if those of you who are old enough to know the difference between Max Waldman's photographs, which have a real timbre, which have a real texture to it, and something like an Instamatic picture, I mean, it's like night and day, and I like more of the textural, softer thing. But when it gets too much so, then I get a little twitchy. So.
No, I found it amazing that you were working on a vision for a show, and I mean, our concept, I think, when we did it was February, something like. I mean, it was the beginning of this year, so your job was already done like half a year ago or a year ago. So, and then it's. I'm amazed that it fits so nicely together. In the end. And, I was wondering if somebody has a feeling that the projection table is. I mean, if somebody says no, I don't want to see that, or because it was an. There was a thought of us as well that we place the projectionist on the stage and having a dialogue. I mean, virtually a dialogue between Whitman or Patrick, who's playing all the different roles, and the guy who is manipulating the image and who's forming, like building thoughts out of material and giving an image. So if it's too close for you or too far, or if it's just right, and if you mean that it's just a question of your perception, if how often you looked over there, or if it distracted you, or that you can think about it in the staging sense.
I didn't know it was meant to be. I thought it was for rehearsal, and so when you were saying, no, change this picture, no, I want to see, it felt like you were talking to like a supernatural, like, no, this is the memory I want to see, no, this is the image that I want to see. So, I'm just now finding out, like, through this discussion that it was intentional.
Well, here's my thing, is that, like I was talking about, like, you engaging with the shadow. Okay, I love the idea of you're engaging with the person who's manipulating the language or the words or the images or whatever. I love that. I feel like it's kind of like live musicians, you know, there's enjoyment from listening to the record, there's real enjoyment seeing them do the thing. And so there's that's kind of cool. I think that if you're going to personify that role and bring it life, you know, so that it's a breathing being, and you are a breathing being, but in terms of that we should be interacting like a character, then it'd be great to have some humor going between that and some tension as well.